Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's Data Intensity webinar, The Do's and Don'ts of Moving Your Enterprise Applications to the Cloud. My name is Josh Reynolds, and I'll be your host today. Today we have Kim Seabury, Director of IT for the leading medical device manufacturer AngioDynamics. Kim will be sharing us the rationale and thoughts for deploying Oracle Enterprise applications in the cloud. We also have Marc Caruso, Chief Technology Officer at managed applications provider Data Intensity. Marc will discuss key requirements our customers have for cloud migrations. He'll also share the cost scenarios for managed applications and data versus the traditional buy, build, maintain IT model. Now, before we get started, let's do a little housekeeping. The total time for today's webinar is scheduled to run approximately 50 minutes, and we'll open up for questions at the end. You can begin submitting any questions as soon as we start. If you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, you can submit your questions in the questions window on the right panel. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll send a link to the webinar after we conclude today. Now, let's quickly review the agenda. I'll begin with a brief introduction to trends in cloud computing, and then we'll turn the conversation over to Marc Caruso, who will discuss considerations customers should have for migrating to the cloud. After that, Marc will discuss cost considerations for managed applications and data. You can think of this as the, quote, TCO of the cloud. And then Kim will discuss insights and experiences for deploying enterprise applications in the cloud from a customer perspective. And finally, we'll wrap up with questions. Now, let's get started by looking at trends in cloud computing. As we head into 2015, cloud computing has certainly become mainstream, and it's no surprise that with the convergence of big data and mobile, cloud is part of the largest seismic shift in IT in the past few decades. In fact, not only has Ziff Davis predicted that over half of IT will be in the cloud in less than a decade, but Gartner predicts that almost one-third of service-centric companies will move most of their ERP applications to the cloud within 4 years. This growth in cloud is driven by some extremely compelling reasons. Better performance and uptime results in improved user experience, and provisioning capabilities deliver radically faster time to deployment and better agility than traditional on-premises applications. Also, cloud gets you out of the hardware game, and shared infrastructure and other capabilities can significantly drive down costs. The growth in cloud is paralleled by a rapid growth in application outsourcing that is also driven by compelling reasons. Application outsourcing gives you the ability to utilize the right resources based on your needs, with a level of in-depth application expertise that is prohibitively expensive to staff for many smaller and mid-sized organizations. It can also give you access to full 24/7 support for the cost of one full-time equivalent, and the coverage you need. This could be 3 resources per day if necessary. And it's important to keep in mind that the complexity of integration means that both technical and functional services are essential in your current environments. As we look specifically at the Oracle world, we see that Oracle itself is driving to move more customers to SaaS. There's a 5x spiff for Oracle reps to sell Fusion SaaS applications, and it's clear why this makes sense for Oracle. But it's also crucial to distinguish between, quote, cloud and SaaS. Just as there's a lot of confusion around the term cloud, and there are different types of clouds, there's also confusion between the term cloud and SaaS. Cloud is not always SaaS, but SaaS is always cloud. SaaS refers to a multi-tenant monthly subscription software service with a black box backend that is accessed via an API. In essence, the purchaser of a SaaS service is only concerned with the front end of the application and their monthly OpEx spend for the application usage, while the back-end infrastructure and the software architecture is responsibility of the SaaS provider. The migration to a SaaS-dominated software paradigm is still in its infancy, but it's gained significant traction with native SaaS applications like Salesforce.com, Workday, and Cornerstone. And given the significant investments Oracle customers have made in their ERP software, it's going to be a long road to that end state. But we're here to help you get there. So if you're evaluating which option is best for you, you need to keep in mind the functionality you require, performance, and flexibility. For example, because the SaaS application is multi-tenant, the SaaS provider will tell you when to patch or when an upgrade will happen. And you'll need to determine whether you get to a SaaS via a full reimplementation or whether you'll employ a coexistence strategy. And you'll need to look at timing. Net-net, there are numerous complex decisions to make in determining whether and how to move to a SaaS implementation for your Oracle Enterprise applications. And we can help you sort this out. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Marc Caruso, CTO at Data Intensity, who provide a model to better define cloud and discuss considerations that Data Intensity customers make when evaluating the migration to cloud implementations for their Oracle Enterprise applications.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Thanks for attending the webinar. We're going to get started by talking a little bit about the differences in the different types of cloud and some of the pros and cons of each. So, if we start off, thinking in the traditional paradigm around on-premise applications, the big benefits are that you own them. You know where the hardware is, you know what goes on the hardware, you have the people to manage it, and you have full control over the stuff that you're running in your data center. The problem with that is that you still have to deal with infrastructure maintenance. Traditional IT departments are slow to deploy, they're expensive to staff, there's turnover, and because of some of these applications and their requirements in terms of the complexity, there's always that risk of downtime. So you've got to get storage administrators and network administrators and system administrators and DBAs all to work together just to make the application itself run. Never mind actually having the staff to be able to help you use the applications. So as data center and connectivity became more commoditized and customers started to roll some of their equipment out of their four walls and into more robust co-location facilities, that was really kind of the first step in outsourcing. And as the paradigm of cloud came into play, we now had the next level of offerings. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, as Josh mentioned, is the software as a service model, which is definitely easy to use. There's no barrier to entry. You pay somebody a subscription fee to use their software, and you're in and up and running. So all the effort there is in the configuration of the software. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure. You just have to worry about the integration to that software with your other applications. So if you take an example like a Salesforce.com, where you have the ability to access Salesforce through a number of different APIs, there's a marketplace that they've offered where you can perform integrations to their software, both from a packaged application standpoint as well as from a customization standpoint. The downside is that there isn't quite as much flexibility. And you are in a situation where when Salesforce says that they're going to upgrade by a certain date, you had better be ready to get through that upgrade. So you don't have quite as much control. And in the case of Oracle SaaS applications, there's also some functionality issues as well. The eBusiness Suite has been around for a very long time, and the functionality is quite robust. And the similar SaaS applications that they offer, some of them are near to the point where eBusiness Suite is in terms of functionality, like the financials applications, but other areas, such as manufacturing, where they are still quite a ways away from delivering the functionality of the packaged app. We also have the paradigm of the public cloud, which companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google are trying to get as much market share as they possibly can and integrate those service offerings with the applications that everybody's running on-premise today. So everybody's getting pressure to move things to the cloud. Well, there are different types of clouds, and if anybody has read any of my latest blog postings, I've put one up on the purpose-built cloud, which is what we do here at Data Intensity. So regardless of what infrastructure you're running on, you have to configure your applications and databases to be able to run in that paradigm. So even in a cloud like Amazon, where you can roll out an Oracle database, you still have to be able to configure that with the application side of things. Here at DI, we've built our cloud so that it's fully integrated with the applications and the databases that we support. So whereas with a public cloud provider, you're not getting as much in terms of control over the nitty-gritty of how those applications work. With DI, we can custom build a solution based on our standard offering that's unique to each customer. So that's the whole idea of the purpose-built cloud. It's all the benefits of having a traditional on-premise, you have full control or close to full control over your infrastructure with the benefits of flexibility, velocity, scalability of public cloud providers. Now, data intensity is never going to become a SaaS provider, so we also recognize there is going to be that path to SaaS applications that's going to happen over time, and one of the questions is, well, when does that happen and how does it happen? And a lot of our customers are asking us, how are we going to get there? So customers are looking for us when they decide that they want to take their applications either out of their internal data center or out of another provider. There's a number of different things that they're looking for from us. One is our service model. So we employ a standards-based service model here that uses our best practices, Oracle's best practices, to configure software environments that are repeatable. That said, we do have the flexibility to support each customer's unique environment, and that is very important. Every business environment is a little bit different. And if you think in terms of the SaaS landscape, one of the big benefits of Salesforce.com is for every customer everywhere, CRM is pretty much the same. It may vary a little bit, but the general principles are the same. Whereas with a manufacturing company, the business process, the processing requirements for each company can vary significantly. So if you have a simple use case like financials or CRM, that's a much easier thing to implement than something like a manufacturing application. The second thing are service level agreements. So guaranteeing that the systems are going to be available, that response times are going to be within a certain time frame. That's why you're outsourcing and doing a full managed cloud type of approach versus just putting your stuff in a co-location environment. The other advantage is that we have purpose-built tools, so all of our systems that we use internally, the automation that we've built around the applications and databases that we support, and the engineering that goes into all of our infrastructure is all part of that ecosystem that allows us to provide the SLAs that we do. And then the last piece is our expertise. So we're an Oracle Platinum partner. We're specialized in a number of different types of technologies and applications, and just in terms of our technical and functional expertise, we have a pretty broad range of things that we are certified to be good in. The act of doing a migration is a little bit different because it's more of a process-based approach, not just a technical activity. So the nice thing about our experience here is that we have done well over 100 end-to-end multi-phase migrations into our cloud, as well as across other locations. And because of the amount of work that we do here, we're able to employ a dedicated team of resources to do that work who have been doing this for a very long time. So our approach when we look at what a solution is going to look like for a customer, we're looking at user trends, workload trends in terms of the requests that are going through the system, the workflow, database statistics, topology information that may be unique to each customer, what the customer's business strategy is internally in terms of their patching life cycles, how they work with their end users and their business community to do life cycle in their environments, and also what pain points they're having. A lot of customers may have specific usage requirements or specific performance requirements they're trying to get for a specific task in their environment, like entering an order. And we try to focus on those particular things where a customer is having trouble. In addition to that, we offer certain service level agreements for customers, and that's one of the things that you're getting as part of a cloud environment. So we're guaranteeing that our facilities will be available, that our networks will be available, and that we're going to respond to customer requests within a given amount of time. And that's for patching, cloning, any kind of service request that a customer may need. So obviously one of the big benefits is you're getting that coverage 24 hours a day. And if you wind up having a lot of things going wrong at once and you need 3 people working on your system at one time, we have the ability to deliver that to you in real time rather than you having to call a consultant to come in and help out your internal team. And really one of our biggest pieces of secret sauce is integrating the infrastructure with the applications and databases we support. And any existing customers who are on the phone have probably heard me talk about this before, but the automation that we've built is key to our delivery infrastructure. And our automation includes things like cloning and patching, backups, proactive resolution of things like blocking sessions within the application, automation around high availability for operating systems, as well as disaster recovery and failover. And then one of the most important things, which is just proactively making sure that your system stays healthy. So running health checks, making sure that you're up to date on patches, making sure that there are no security profile options that aren't set the way they should be. And then integrating that with our monitoring system and our ticket system so that there's a full end-to-end solution. From an infrastructure standpoint, there are a lot of things, especially when you look at a public cloud provider, if you are looking to deploy applications with them, that you're going to need as part of that solution. So it's not just about deploying some applications in some databases. You also have to worry about things like DNS, network time protocol, logging, authentication, printing, email, and things like that. And with our offering, we're providing a full end-to-end solution with all of those things already built in. So in terms of how you do a migration, there are a couple different things that we consider. One is our reference architecture. So every new implementation that we do, every new software installation is part of a reference architecture that we certify will work well in our environment, that we've tested. Those reference architectures are used as the foundation of all of the migrations. And the migrations that we do all follow the same basic process. We're trying to minimize risk with the approach that we take and manage the downtime of moving to the cloud with the technology. Our governance approach, we have a dedicated migration team, as I mentioned, named project managers, program managers, DBAs, and infrastructure engineers. And we try to set up the project so that we have regular and frequent communications to make sure that nothing gets delayed. So obviously this is a critical activity for any customer that's considering it. We understand that there is a lot of angst within the business for these types of activities. So for us, one of our key roles is to make sure that the IT teams that we're working with, the finance teams that we're working with, have all the information they need to communicate with their user communities and make sure that they are calm and know that this is going to go off without a hitch. One of the best ways we do that is by taking the initial migration and putting that on the infrastructure that will be eventually a customer's production systems. So as you go through testing, you're actually testing on what will be your production environment. So you know what the end performance result is going to be. You know what the user experience is going to be. And when it comes time to do the final migration, we're able to basically go through and do that such that only the data is being refreshed. From a testing standpoint, and we'll talk a little bit about this with Kim, there are a number of different areas that we have customers go through, and that includes workflow, customizations, printing, things like that are more technical in nature. Typically during a migration, we're not applying a significant number of functional patches, so there isn't a lot of end-user testing that has to get done, but most companies will go through some level of end-user testing, similar to what you would do for a critical patch update. So this standardization that we have developed really drives the migration times down. Usually we'll take the opportunity to patch up from a database standpoint, and in certain cases we'll also do the application as well, which is obviously going to add a little bit of time to the testing cycles. For most migrations, they're running anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So a week for what we call the initialization phase, getting documentation put together, running through system configurations with the customer. Then we take a week for provisioning, and then we go through and do an initial migration. And we basically take a full copy of the customer's systems, the database and application systems. We migrate them over to the production hardware. They go in and do their testing. Once all those issues are resolved, we either have the option of going forward with a production migration, which is basically a 2-iteration approach, or we do a second non-production iteration, which is what we did with AngioDynamics that you'll hear from Kim in a minute. And we move forward with the final migration after that. We also have a period of post-go-live support for about 4 weeks where we tweak performance, optimize scheduling, things like that.
Thank you very much, Mark. We're at a point now where it's time to begin to talk about the total cost of ownership. So let me go ahead and transition the microphone back over to you. Thanks.
So one of the things that we've always talked to customers about and prospects about is, what is the total cost of ownership? And as we get into the SaaS paradigm and move further towards that, it becomes an increasingly important question, looking at the division between CapEx and OpEx, looking at the true cost of ownership and not just the cost of monthly recurring fees, but what that really means overall. So we've been putting some time and energy into developing a TCO model that we can show to customers that is really comprehensive and covers not only the hard costs. And usually when you're having these discussions with management, they want to see some hard cost savings, but also the soft costs, which, from my position as a technologist and as somebody who ran an ERP system, a pretty large ERP system for a while, it is very important to look at the soft costs as well, because usually there's even more savings and more benefit on the soft cost side of things. So the two scenarios that we're going to go through today, which we'll run through fairly quickly so we don't get bogged down in the details, are two companies, one of which is a smaller mid-market company with about $300 million in revenue, and one is a larger mid-market company of about $800 million in revenue. And the TCO analysis that we're going to go through here is for on-premise Oracle applications versus the Data Intensity Cloud. But we have other TCOs available as well, and so we'll work with a customer in their particular situation to show what the total cost of ownership is for their particular case. And we expect that we'll be doing a lot of these types of analyses as customers start looking towards going to the Oracle Fusion applications 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So our strategy is to look at the hard costs, so the infrastructure, CapEx and OpEx, the staffing costs, some of which stay, some of which go in a managed cloud model. Others actually just get shifted around a little bit. And then some other costs, like cost of monitoring, incremental data center costs, et cetera. And then we look at soft costs due to things like downtime because of lack of expertise. So some of the assumptions that we're making in the cost analysis, for company A, we're assuming that it's just eBusiness Suite. For company B, we assume eBusiness Suite and 3 other ancillary applications. And for the purposes of this exercise, we chose Hyperion, Agile, and Oracle Business Intelligence. We assumed a 25% turnover rate, and that the turnover cost is about 20% of an FTE's base salary. We also estimated some spend in terms of contractor and overtime costs for things where you have to do maintenance in the middle of the night and things like that, as well as some level of hardware infrastructure refresh cost as well. So you can see on the right side of that slide the topology for company A and company B. Company A is fairly straightforward, typical 2-tier architecture for production and then non-production, and then a little bit more complex for company B. And we assume that the cost of downtime, so the cost of the system being down, is about $20,000 per hour for company A and about $50,000 an hour for company B. And it assumes that these are manufacturing businesses. So if we look at the hard costs for company B, which is the larger of the two, you can see here on the left-hand side that the components here in terms of DBA time, IT manager and engineering time, application administrator time, and OpEx are fairly comparable to the costs at Data Intensity in terms of the application database management. And then there is a reduction in the cost for continuing staff. So there's an assumption there that you're going to have less staff requirements running in a managed cloud paradigm. You won't have DBA services. We'll be doing that. It'll be less time for your infrastructure resources because we'll be handling those things, as well as the elimination of hardware CapEx requirements. So for purposes of this exercise, the hard cost savings that we're realizing here going into a cloud paradigm is about 13%. Now, if we look at the total cost of ownership here and look at the downtime costs, and we're assuming that even in a DI paradigm that there is going to be some level of application downtime. And we're typically running at a 99.95% uptime, so we have about 40 minutes of downtime per year, typically for a customer's application. Whereas the in-house, we're assuming about 3 hours of downtime per year, which I still think is pretty aggressive. And if you look at the comparison between the two, it is a significant advantage being in a cloud paradigm. We're looking at about 20% difference there. For a smaller company, which is a company A, the $300 million company, the hard cost savings is even larger because of the fact that usually within a larger organization you're able to leverage your infrastructure across more applications. For a smaller company, that's a little bit more difficult. So the hard cost savings here, you still need to have a DBA, you still need to have the same infrastructure resources. So it's much more stressful being a smaller company being in this paradigm. Again, which is one of the reasons why SaaS is appealing. So the hard cost savings in this example are about 35% and get even larger when you look at the soft costs there. And typically for a smaller company, you also have availability issues as well, where your resources aren't available 24/7. So in conclusion, from a TCO standpoint, one of the keys here, especially from the soft costs, is minimizing your mean time to recovery. And that is led from a perspective of an integrated service offering where you are engineering the applications and databases for the infrastructure that you're running on and can resolve problems a lot more quickly than if you were using some generic infrastructure resources who don't understand the applications that they're supporting. You're redirecting your internal resources away from specialized technologies to be able to focus on more value-added topics and leave the harder stuff to companies like us that specialize in certain areas. We also saw that the TCO model is going to be very different based on business sector and availability requirements. So if you're a 24/7 manufacturer, the value is going to be a lot higher running in a paradigm like this than if you were simply running financials 8x5. Without presenting this type of a model, quantifying some of the soft benefits can be difficult. So one of the things that we are working with customers and prospects on is getting them to go to the business and say, well, what it really is the cost of an hour of downtime, and be able to show the model where we can actually present that in a dollar figure so that they can see what the real benefit is. And the biggest thing is that we're seeing is that the business itself can take the velocity and flexibility for granted. They forget the fact that internal IT used to take 2 months or 3 months to provision a server, whereas now they can call up and have one in a few days or even a few hours if necessary. So you have to continually remind them that they're getting value for the service.
Thanks, Mark. This gives us a great deal of data to work with. So now is definitely the time to dig a little deeper into real-world deployment with Kim Seabury, who, as you recall, is Director of IT at AngioDynamics. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much.
So, Kim, could you just start off and tell us a little bit about yourself and AngioDynamics?
Sure. Again, Kim Seabury. I'm the Director of IT at Angio. I've been here for a little over 3 years now, but previously ran IT organizations within large enterprise software companies and was also an VP of engineering for software for a number of years. When I came to Angio 3 years ago, we immediately embarked upon some big projects. So who Angio is we're a leading provider of innovative, minimally invasive medical devices. They're used by healthcare professionals for vascular access, surgery, peripheral vascular disease, and oncology. So in more human terms, digestive terms, the devices that Angio manufactures assist patients in treating conditions such as varicose veins, ports for diabetes and drug treatments, ablation technologies for cancer patients. So we're kind of across the board. We assist patients really in the spectrum of treating people to regain their health and to making people more comfortable at end-of-life periods. So it's a broad spectrum. Our corporate offices are located outside of Albany, New York, snowy Albany today. And we're in an area that's commonly called in the medical device arena as Catheter Alley. There's a bunch of med device companies similar to us in this area. We have manufacturing locations based throughout the U.S. and into Europe. We run 3 shifts in many of those plants, and we also have global sales and distribution channels. So we are a global company, and we are supporting a team throughout the world.
Terrific. Now, can you tell us a little bit about some of the applications that are running in your environment?
Sure. Angio's environment is pretty complex. It's adapted over time to take advantage of both the best of in-house managed services and outsourced services. Our applications environment consists of our Oracle EBS system, which includes things like WMS, MFG, HRIS, financial system, and others. Agile is what we use for our quality management software, and we also use OBI for reporting. Our Oracle environment is also connected to other applications that run critical pieces for us, such as transportation management, custom software used in our manufacturing processes, payroll, and EDI. And I also mentioned earlier that we serve a global workforce. So we have secondary facilities globally, including distribution centers, minor manufacturing sites, and some smaller sales office. Of course, our sales force is also global and remote, so we have to ensure everyone has the ability to do their job while maintaining security in our environments. And one last note, it shouldn't come as a surprise, we're a medical device, so we're highly regulated. We're public also, so that puts us under the requirements for Sarbanes-Oxley. We employ people globally, so we're responsible to adhere to all of the regulations associated with people in each country we have employees in. And back in med device, you know, we're primarily Class 2 device, which means our products go inside people's bodies. It actually puts us at a higher degree of scrutiny compared to, like, let's say, a software company or a furniture manufacturer. We are FDA regulated here in the United States, and we also manage products to global standards, their own country standards similar to FDA regulations, in order to sell in those arenas. So our systems are all validated through IQ, OQ, and PQ procedures. It's pretty complex, and there's a lot going on.
Great, thanks. Talk to us a little bit about your decision to move to the cloud, both in terms of outsourcing the infrastructure as well as the application support.
Okay. So when we decided as AngioDynamics to make the leap to the cloud, we had a few different deciding factors. Some key ones, though, were certainly cost. You know, you're always told in IT, do more with what you have. Resources. You know, I've got a smallish IT team here at Angio. We have to constantly keep up with technology and all of the changes that go around that, and it, you know, everybody knows it changes at such a rapid pace these days. The things that you plan next week could be obsolete, it seems like, in a month. So keeping our resources trained, as well as, you know, any turnover that you might have is certainly always a challenge. We don't sit in Silicon Valley here, so it's certainly something we have to look at. And also security was the third factor. You know, we have to manage an environment that doesn't put us at greater risk. So when we were looking at cloud, we were considering those really were 3 of the key factors we were looking at. I also had a lot of prior experience that gave me a lot of confidence in cloud. So I had that, but I really had to adjust my thinking for a medical device company. Part of what reinforced that decision was we made a large acquisition of Navalis Medical back in 2012. It was very shortly after I joined the company. Navalis at the time were hosting their Oracle environment already. So when we made the decision to move the business onto Oracle, we reevaluated that hosting option. We reevaluated the cost, the risk, the benefit to the company. We looked at all of the security aspects, and we decided to remain in the cloud. It was absolutely the best decision for the business.
Great. What attracted you to Data Intensity? What made us different from the other providers that you looked at or that you've worked with in the past?
So we've had experience with previous host providers. We also manage our own data center. So we knew what we were looking for based upon that experience. When we started talking to Data Intensity, we admittedly probably came in a little bit hard, and that was primarily because we had a previous experience with a provider that had been a bit challenging, to say the least. I had my own experiences from outside, as well as some of the team that I work with. But as we started speaking to DI, it became clear that we were on the same page, and I think that that was really a big turning point for us. Our expectations were shared, and as we've moved forward with the relationships, both sides are realistic. We expect bumps, but we've been able to work through as a team any of the challenges that have been presented to us, and it's been a good relationship for Angio, and I certainly think it's been a good relationship for Data Intensity as well.
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that a lot of customers that are looking to move to the cloud struggle with are those discussions with their IT teams, telling them that they're going to lose some of that control, and also even in some cases with management. Could you talk a little bit about the discussion that you had with your internal team and also your management team around the decision to move to cloud?
Sure, and you're right. There's absolutely two different conversations to have. So starting first with my team, there's certainly skepticism. IT people, my team, we want to touch things. We want to be able to walk into a server room and press buttons and do what we need to do from a console as opposed to doing things remotely. It's that kind of creature comfort of being close to things. But at the same time, having the challenge of we don't have a team that's expanding, we needed to do more. So my management team and I still had to work to instill trust and confidence in our team to make sure that they knew that they weren't losing control. They were actually gaining a lot more by being able to work with a partner like Data Intensity, because we really gained resources. Also, those are mental hurdles you have amongst your team. One of the things that we found successful in getting people over that hump was we assigned ownership. We didn't just take people's roles and drastically change them or rip them out from underneath them. We said, hey, you know what? You're the guy or the gal that knows the most about this arena. I want you to work directly with DI in order to make sure that you're both talking the same language, that you're learning from one another, and that we're setting up an environment that's beneficial to Angio overall. So that was the first conversation. The second conversation is certainly with the executive team, and being a public company, it's also with the board of directors. It's not a minor decision. Risk and cost are always the first two things that any executive or any board of directors starts thinking about. So from a risk perspective, we had to talk through them about security, about Data Intensity's ability to help us better monitor our systems, and also about disaster recovery. You don't want to think about that in realistic terms, but at the same time, you've got business continuity and disaster recovery that you've got to think about. So I had to instill confidence in them that it was the best decision for us. And then from a cost perspective, it's not just about the bill that you get on a monthly basis or the projects that you do together. It's about personnel as well, and it was a benefit to us in the way that we could augment our team by leaning on Data Intensity as really staff augmentation and helping us to get through things that I think you said earlier, Mark, in your presentation, that something that might take us a couple of months to do with Data Intensity, now we've got a whole bunch of other hands and a different set of knowledge that can actually help us do things quicker. So those were big things that we talked with both the IT team and our executive teams about that made this, kind of a real big win for Angio overall.
Thanks, Kim. I think that will really, really help folks in their discussions with their own businesses. What about the level of effort for the migration? How much did you involve the business, and was it more or less than you expected?
So the migration itself was months in planning. So we actually did 3 dry runs before cutover, and I can't stress enough the importance of planning. Plan, because the actual downtime for final execution is really what the end user, most of our business saw, and we only had 48 hours of downtime. We actually shrunk that a little bit. We actually came in a little bit earlier, but we had that success because we planned, and we planned for worst case scenarios. So the business overall was deeply involved in our project. As soon as we started evaluating new host providers, we made sure that our business executives knew what was going on and why we were doing that. All of the areas that had to do things to assist us in testing, for validation, being prepared for downtime, communicating with our customers, we started talking literally when we started planning this project. As soon as we selected the vendor, they knew who it was, and all of those areas had full visibility to our project plans. We made sure they had a level of involvement because they were critical to the success of it.
Great. Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you had with the Go Live and how those challenges were resolved. Nothing goes smooth. So.
Yeah, if you think everything's going to go smoothly, you're kind of kidding yourself. I think that's just such a life rule anyway. So I will say the 3 dry runs that we did before cutover, you get through the first dry run of everything and you think to yourself, oh my goodness, look at all the things that we just tripped over. How are we going to overcome these things? You get to the second one and you have fewer of those, and you get to the third one and hopefully you don't have very many at all, maybe just 1 or 2. And then, so when we got to cutover weekend, my team here at Angio, the data intensity team, we were well rehearsed. It wasn't lost on us, the value of those 3 dry runs. But on Go Live weekend, we had a couple of tasks that probably took longer than we thought that they would or that we had planned for, but we had other tasks that came in under the time. So like I said earlier, we actually saved a few hours of time, and it gave us a couple of extra hours of testing. And we did a lot of planning up ahead. So during the migration, there were challenges, but also our calls that we set up. We had a communication line 24/7. We had regular meetings probably every 4 hours during the cutover time. We absolutely planned for the worst. So whenever anything was met with a small bit of resistance, if there was a minor problem, we had the right people assigned. They were on point and they attacked it quickly. So we overcame any of the challenges fairly fast, and it just proved the success.
Great. Now, in terms of longer-term planning, we've talked a little bit on this webinar about the Fusion applications and migrating into that SaaS paradigm. We here at Data Intensity kind of look at this as a 5 to 8 year type of activity in terms of customers getting to the point with their on-premise ERP systems or traditional packaged ERP systems where they're buying those licenses rather than doing the subscription fee. 2021 is kind of the date that Oracle has set right now for the final release of 12.2. What are your plans in terms of longer term looking at Fusion applications?
Fusion and cloud is always a consideration as we're doing our strategic planning. As a matter of fact, right now we're currently revising our 5-year plan. We look, in IT terms, 5 years might as well be a century. So, when we're looking at our future long-term planning, I'm looking at increasing the scope of the business applications that Angio uses to support the business. We're thinking about things like depot repair and field service. We're thinking about things like a new CRM system. There's a bunch of big ones on our plate, and every single one of those we will look at, and very likely do in the cloud. It's challenging to manage a data center without a whole bunch of bodies in order to do that, and so we look at both sides of the coin when we're doing any of our strategic planning. As far as Oracle's strategy, they're certainly part of our portfolio, so we'll consider them in any technology decisions that we make as well. Returning from Oracle Open World, they've got a pretty strong suit. If you'd asked me 7 years ago, they were just acquiring a bunch of companies along the way, and I think that they've matured the products to a point now where, we do take a hard look at them. They are in consideration.
Great.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Mark and Kim. Let's go ahead, and now it's really the opportunity for people who are on the phone to begin to ask some questions. So if you haven't already submitted a question, I encourage you to go ahead and do so right now, and you can type it into the question window on your screen. Okay, looks like we've got a few questions here that have come in. So let me go. Let's do this. Mark, perhaps you can take this one. The question is, how can I minimize the risk of migration?
So, minimizing the risk in the migration is really about the approach that's taken. And here at Data Intensity, we plan in minute detail the different activities that have to be taken, but it's also in the way that you're doing that initial migration. So again, we take the approach of putting a new customer on what will be their production system. So as they're going through their testing, they know that they're resolving issues. And because the final migration is only updating data, they know that their testing is still going to be valid even during that, after that production run. So that's one big way of minimizing the risk. The other way is by making sure that you have a solid test plan in place. And Kim talked a lot about this in her comments. But it is important to get the business involved, making sure that you have all of your customizations documented, or working with your provider to make sure that they can document them while you're doing the migration, and keeping good issues and resolution documentation as well.
Thanks, Mark. We've got a couple more questions here. Let's see. Mark, this probably again goes back to you. Then we'll take a regular question for Kim as well too. But what are my customers responsible? I think this is a question you'll find a lot of customers asking. What are my company's responsibilities in involvement during the migration process?
So as Kim mentioned, I mean, the biggest thing is making sure that that you're communicating with the business community about the schedule, making sure that they're prepared to test when the systems are released for testing, making sure that the key technical team members are available for phone calls, and then making sure that the testing actually gets completed and gets completed completely. We've had a few customers over the years that have not done a very good job in testing, and that really shows with the quality of the migration. When we actually go live, people will find some new issues that really should have been caught during that testing, and it's unfortunate because from a sponsorship standpoint within the customer, whoever is responsible for making the decision to move to cloud, if the people that they're working with don't do a good job testing, then it's going to make them look bad. So it's in everyone's best interest to make sure that there's thorough testing done.
That makes sense. Okay, it looks like we've got a question. This is a question for Kim. I think it's following on the conversation, Kim, that you and Mark had around your goals, et cetera. But the question is, have you achieved your goals in migrating to the cloud?
Yeah, I would say, let me give you a two-part answer to that one. The initial deployment, yes, absolutely. We did achieve the goals. We were able to seamlessly migrate with very little downtime, and that, to us, was a big win. But the second part of the answer, I guess, is, our needs still continue to evolve, so my expectations evolve with them. So, I don't want to forget about the things that we want to continue to improve upon going forward. So continuous improvement is part of that, and making sure that we are going to work closely with DI to make sure that we are putting up more value in the DI cloud. So yes, we have, and evolving. How's that?
Yeah, I guess that's the reality. So it's good to know the first part's working, and we look forward to working with you on the next parts. We do have one final question, and we'll direct this over to Mark again. The question we've got is a pretty general one, but what are you finding to be the most compelling reasons for companies to make the decision to move to the cloud for their enterprise apps?
I think they're probably the top 5 are cost, flexibility, velocity, availability, and the fact that they don't have to be in the hardware business anymore. Just having that team that they know their application's on, it's the benefits of getting a SaaS application, so you don't have to worry about the back end anymore. You're just really worried about running the applications. The licensing side isn't taken into consideration in that type of paradigm, but you're getting a lot of the benefits of SaaS, without having to deal with a lot of the headaches of having an on-prem type of solution.
I think for those of us who have dealt with the hardware business for a long time, getting out of that is definitely something to look forward to.
Yes, it is.
I will agree.
Here, all the way around. Well, thank you again, Mark and Kim. It does look like we've run to the end of our time. So I will leave a final offer for those of us who have those of us who enjoy the presentation. You will be receiving an email that contains a link to the session recording as soon as it's available. I do want to point out some sources of information moving forward. The first and foremost, of course, is dataintensity.com, our website. But also, you might want to check out a related slideshow, which is available on IT Business Edge. The title is fairly similar to what we've got here. It's Migrating Oracle Applications to the Cloud, 7 Do's and Don'ts. It's definitely worth taking a look at. And the other thing that you can do is to take a look at other customers' experiences as they've put together cloud deployments, and you can find that on our website at the Customers section, or dataintensitycom.customers. Or if you really want to get the conversation in more depth, by all means, we've got the information to speak with us directly, and we hope that that's certainly the case. So we hope you enjoyed the presentation. On behalf of Mark, Kim, and Data Intensity, we thank you for attending. Goodbye now.